On this episode of the Video Archives podcast, Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary are on the jury in the Andersonville Trial. Based on the play by Saul Levitt, Quentin and Roger discuss Quentin's last viewing of the film with Floyd, how director George C. Scott's own performance in the stage play informed his direction of this testosterone-filled powerhouse gang of actors, and the ethics of one's own morals. Would you have done different if you had the chance? The jury's still out on that one. Second on our docket, Quentin and Roger hit the slopes in The Ultimate Thrill. At a Colorado ski resort, a woman lets a man into her house so that he doesn't die from hypothermia. Despite nothing sexual happening between them, her husband assumes the worst and goes after the man. What ensues is a supreme game of live or die. A Video Gems title, Quentin and Roger have fun making ciphers out of the actors and share with us where this movie shines. And to finish up our triple feature, we watched a movie to prove that Quentin wasn't imagining things. And believe me, he wasn't. It's Jimmy Wang Yu's Beach of the War Gods, where a wandering swordsman defeats a squad of Japanese invaders, thus agreeing to protect the town from invasion. He puts together a ragtag group of warriors, and together they go to epic battle with the invaders. Quentin gives us a history lesson on director Jimmy Wang Yu and his importance in the scope of both Hong Kong and Taiwanese cinema, before we move on to the discussion of the director's talent and commitment to cinematic language. I'm Gala Avary, and joining us now, here's Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary.
Okay, thank you, Gala. Hello, everybody. This is Quentin Tarantino along with
Roger Avary
on another exciting episode of the Video Archives podcast, Kill the Bagalov. So our first film, I haven't seen it in quite a few years. I saw it on PBS, and it ends up being another one of our subjects of further research, where we've liked a film by a director and we're going to follow up with another film by the director. And in this case, it's one of our Video Archives returning champions, George C. Scott. And it's another film that George C. Scott directed. It's his filmic version of Saul Levitt's The Andersonville Trial, which he did for, I think, the American Masters or American Playhouse.
In 1970.
Yeah, in the 70s, for PBS. It was a very meaningful play for George C. Scott because he played the prosecuting attorney.
Colonel Chipman,
in the original Broadway production. And the play was a smash success. And this is the play that made George C. Scott famous. This is the play that made George C. Scott. That whole time of Anatomy of a Murder and then him doing the Andersonville Trial on Broadway, that is the creation of the George C. Scott that we know and love, and of the powerhouse, the Maverick, was created during that season. And he loved the material so much, and he was famous for directing plays. He directed Harvey Keitel in a version on Broadway of Death of a Salesman, where he played Willie, and James Tarantino played Biff, and Harvey played Hap, the brother.
It's a great cast.
Yeah.
And this is the same year as Patton that he did this. So he's like at the height of his power, kind of.
Exactly.
Patton was huge.
Oh, no, he's absolutely at the height of his power. I first saw this piece. Anybody who read Cinema Speculation will get a kick out of this. There was a few films that were seminal that I watched with this character, but in Cinema Speculation, you'll remember in the last chapter, I talk about a character named Floyd and the different movies that we watched together. Okay, we watched the Andersonville Trial together when they showed it in '78 on PBS, and I loved it. He loved it. We were both really, really into it. George C. Scott was one of his favorite actors of all time. He thought the play was so deep. It was one of my favorite Floyd screenings. In fact, when me and Roger watched this recently, Floyd was in the room.
It was really special, actually, that I got to sit in for Floyd. Mm-hmm. That I was Floyd for this.
You did, yeah. You did sit in for Floyd.
Screening. And had you seen it since you had watched it back when with Floyd?
I think I saw it about 15 years ago because I picked up a video cassette. The video cassette we watched, I picked it up from a collector advertising in the big reel. So I watched it when it came out, when I first got it, but I haven't seen it since.
Well, it was great because at moments where I would feel something, like I'd be feeling something, you'd say, well, when this happened, Floyd felt this. And
yeah.
I'd be like, Yeah, I feel like I'm like Floyd is like the ghost of Floyd is sitting in my chair, like occupying my space.
Well, that would have been meaningful if I hadn't written the book. It would have been meaningful for me anyway. But now that I've read the book and have made Floyd such a famous character, and so many people bring him up to me, that it had even more resonance.
Well,
all right, when it happened.
And also these kinds of PBS productions, which are productions of plays.
Yeah.
They were flowing in on my channel 3. That's where I got PBS was channel 3. Or it was channel 28 for us in LA, but
UHF.
It was UHF. And so I caught all sorts of stuff that was like, it was how I got my culture, by watching I, Claudius, by watching things like this. But I had never seen the Andersonville Trial. I knew about Andersonville, but had never seen the play.
Well, let me read the back of it. Okay. So since the videotape I have doesn't have a back to read from, because it's just from a bootlegger collector, I'm going to read the back of a DVD.
Yeah, it was literally like, that's the original broadcast. It was like taped.
Yeah. No, they taped it right off of television. This post-Civil War court-martial drama focuses on the trial of a Confederate officer who ran the notorious prisoner of war camp in Andersonville, Georgia, where over 14,000 Union prisoners died from disease, starvation, and neglect. The defendant, Captain Henry Wirtz, justified his actions with the plea that he was only following orders. He believed he was relieved of any personal responsibility because he was performing his duty. The Army prosecutor contends, however, that moral men must rebel against barbaric or inhuman orders, quote, even if they are within the framework imposed by military discipline, unquote. This riveting real-life story has elements of Inherit the Wind, the Caine Mutiny, A Few Good Men, and especially the Nuremberg and Eichmann war crime trials. George C. Scott, who had played a starring role in the original 1959 Broadway production, directs the Hollywood television theater adaptation and prompts uniformly strong acting from a brilliant cast that includes William Shatner, Martin Sheen, Richard Basehart, Jack Cassidy, Buddy Ebsen, and Alan Hale. Winner of 3 Emmy Awards in 1971 for Outstanding Single Program Drama or Comedy, Outstanding Writing Achievement in a Drama, Saul Levitt, writer, and Outstanding Achievement in Technical Direction and Electronic Camera Work, Gordon Biard, Technical Director, Tom Ansel, Cameraman, and Rick Benowitz, Cameraman. Nominated for both Outstanding Single Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role, Jack Cassidy, and Outstanding Achievement in Lighting Direction, Kem Dittling, Lighting Director. So as that said, it's about the trial of Henry Wirtz, who was the commandant at Andersonville Confederate Prisoner of War Camp, or I guess Union Prisoner of War Camp.
It's a Confederate prison of Union soldiers.
Thank you. That, from all reports, seems to be like the closest equivalent to Dachau that has ever taken place on American soil.
Or at least documented in a trial.
Yeah. And the parallels between the Final Solution and the death camps, and especially the idea of Richard Basehart, who's actually playing Swiss in there, all right, as the commandant of the camp.
With his strong German accent.
Yeah, it just, highlights it. And there is even a whole aspect about the prosecuting attorney, who was played by George C. Scott in the original production and William Shatner in this production. He is dealing with it in a very Nuremberg kind of way, of dealing with the morality of what is inhuman and what is not, what is barbaric and what is not.
When is the excuse of I was just following orders not enough of an excuse?
Exactly. And the dilemma of the play, and it's a magnificent dilemma. The play it's fantastic. It's completely juicy because it has two things that are great. One, it's a true story. It all really happened, so there's that. But it's such a juicy metaphor for the Holocaust, you just can't be denied. But as great a metaphor as it is, it's a great story and a great piece of history unto itself.
Well, and it's asking the question, how does this happen? How does something like that happen?
Yeah. But the theater work of the piece is not just reciting the things that happen. It's the dilemma they give William Shatner's character. Because he doesn't just want to win the case. He knows he's going to win. The trial is not set up for Wirtz to get off. He's going to pay for this, all right?
It's a Cardassian trial.
Yeah. But it's important. It's important for William Shatner that he be convicted for the right thing and not the wrong thing. And the right thing is that no human being that can call himself a human should follow those orders. Yet he's trying to make this point at a military court-martial, where the whole point is following orders. That cannot be the basis in which Wirtz is found guilty, but that's the only basis that William Shatner, it's a moral failing unless it's done that way.
Yeah, because if you convict someone on this, then that just opens it up for everyone to constantly deny orders. Mm-hmm. Well, I denied those orders on the basis of my moral grounds, my personal moral.
So the main cast that comprises the quartet of this movie is William Shatner as the prosecuting attorney.
Playing the George C. Scott role.
Yes. Jack Cassidy, who is playing the Southern lawyer who's defending Wirtz, and I think steals the movie. All right.
He's unlike the Jack Cassidy I've ever seen anywhere else.
To me, this is Jack Cassidy.
Yeah.
To me, I've always thought he blew me away so much. This is such a scene.
His look works for this movie in particular. Usually his look is that kind of...
No, as a matter of fact.
Slightly smarmy look.
No, his look is so perfect for this that I couldn't get it out of my mind when I was doing Django Unchained and I was casting the Spencer Bennett character, the character that Don Johnson played. I just so had Jack Cassidy in the Andersonville Trial in my mind.
Well, because he's got that Southern lawyer look.
Yeah, but
naturally he has that
mixed with a handsome Colonel Sanders.
Yeah,
But then you also have there's Richard Basehart, returning champion from Rage, even though they haven't done it yet,
playing the Commandant,
and then in a powerhouse performance, I cannot express enough what a powerhouse performance from Cameron Mitchell.
Oh yeah,
as the judge advocate, all right, as the general at the table that stands in as the judge and does all the talking.
Is so authentic feeling in this role. He so feels like a Union soldier who's seen war and he just wants it done.
Yeah.
He knows what this is. This is a functionary trial. We just got to get this done. Yeah. Can we get this done today, please?
Yeah.
As he continues smoking those cigarillos and he gets sweatier and sweatier because it's getting hotter and hotter in the courtroom. And as the buttons start popping off his collar.
Yeah, and he's got a scarf tied around his neck because he's just like, it's just
and he's kind of unshaven like a soldier, would be like, he doesn't care about the presentation as much.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved him like I've never loved Cameron Mitchell.
I mean, he just seems like a magnificent stage actor. I mean, like a theatrical powerhouse, like a Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, literally a powerhouse, like a Christoph Waltz, a theatrical powerhouse.
He's sitting down most of the time, and his presence is huge.
And then when he stands up and moves, he takes the entire audience with him in a way that nobody else does.
Yeah. And I just love his kind of unkempt, like, let's just get this over with.
I never realized what a great theater voice he had. We're not used to hearing Cameron Mitchell say dialogue this good. All right. To see him work at material at this level is to see, it's almost my entire Martin Landau idea of you take these guys that do nothing but, junky stuff, and then you give them something to eat, something nourishing. They destroy with it. And that's just what Cameron Mitchell did. Now, I never saw it, but one of Cameron Mitchell's big movie appearances is he's in the film version of Elia Kazan's film version of Death of a Salesman.
Right.
With Lee J. Cobb. And he played Hap. So
this is not a movie. This is a TV production. And so
it's a play. It's a play.
Well, but it's like a video of it's shot on video, kind of like Scarlet Letter.
Okay, but let me
on stage.
But let me explain that a little bit, though. It's like it is the play. It is the play. But George C. Scott, he's tasked with making it cinematic. He's tasked with dramatizing it, not just with the acting, but with camera.
Well, that's what I was going to get at. He's bringing a great sense of cinema. And my favorite moments, my absolute favorite moments, where there's a number of witnesses that come in, usually doctors, and I think Buddy Ebsen is one of them.
Buddy Ebsen's one of them,
and each time a witness comes in, when their scene is done, he almost separates from the whole court proceeding, and he spends a tiny moment with that actor, just focusing on the bit player and their kind of the moments they're feeling after their testimony. Something that I'm not sure they would have done that necessarily in the play. Maybe.
No, you can't do it in the play. All right. So that's one of the things that George C. Scott is bringing to this filmic production is I'm going to do what you can't do on a Broadway play. And
I'm going to tighten the moment on faces.
Well, but basically, I mean, literally what he's doing is I want to see the moment after they leave stage.
That's exactly it.
I want to see the 10 seconds. I want to watch them for 10 seconds once they step off stage.
It's the moment where they're realizing that they now live with their testimony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so now I knew about Andersonville, and I knew that it was a hellhole of a prison camp in Georgia, that it's Confederacy. And I was only vaguely aware about the trial, and I had no idea about the Henry Wirtz, the commandant's, that he was Swiss, that there was this connection that one could easily draw. I mean, you kind of always know, everybody always used to call Andersonville when I was young in high school, the Auschwitz of the Civil War.
Right.
What I started feeling in this, which I felt in Rage also, was the presence of Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
The presence of someone who George C. Scott, I think, is cinematically close to. They think alike, these two guys. There's a reason those two guys got along.
I would bet that Stanley Kubrick saw the Andersonville trial on Broadway.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure of it.
And I would not be surprised if George C. Scott didn't bring 3 video cassettes the size of a Buick, all right, to England to actually show Kubrick the Andersonville trial when he filmed,
and in particular,
his little rough cut, 20-minute
completely
video cassettes.
In particular, Paths of Glory.
Yeah.
Because Paths of Glory is dealing with what does it mean to take orders and follow through on orders. Shoot on the men. They're leaving the trenches, fire, and they decline to fire on their own men. And because of that, there's cowardice among the ranks, and we're going to execute a bunch of guys. They do like a little faux proceeding, and the Adolphe Monjou was almost in this. I was feeling them as I was watching.
Oh, and
this.
by the way, and if Cameron Mitchell couldn't do it, the only other person is Ralph Meeker to play this role.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
I mean, the only other person that you would not lose anything.
And that it would have felt that authenticity.
I don't miss him over Cameron Mitchell, but I miss Meeker in this production.
And then the idea of the pursuit of justice at any cost, the desire to win at any cost to punish one's enemy.
Yeah.
To start making up legal strategies based on how to get around the restrictions that are placed against him. Shatner's character unravels. Yeah. He starts off tightly buttoned, more than anybody. But his hair is combed almost like a raptor, it's pointy in the middle kind of. And he's doing such great Shatner stuff that, I mean, for me, you know how much I love
me too.
Shatner. And so when the minute you mentioned, Shatner doing the George C. Scott role, I was like, well, there's nobody else that I would want to see doing George C. Scott other than Shatner. But by the end of it, it's like he's disintegrating. The threads are coming loose on his clothes. He's desperate to win at any cost, and it doesn't matter.
No, but there's something else going on here, and it's it's what makes it great stagecraft as opposed to just a dramatization of the court record. Because this isn't a dramatization of the court record. I'm sure a lot of the court record is correct, but it's a play. He's writing it as a play.
I'm sure it was referenced. They knew they know the key frames of the trial.
I'm sure he's quoting liberally from.
But he's dramatized it and tightened it and turned it into a play.
And he's got his own dramatic purposes. George C. Scott does an introduction at the beginning, and he says, "I think you will find that even though this play takes place 100 years ago, it has a lot to say now and for all times." And I do actually think that the Andersonville trial is one of those plays that you can watch every 10 years. And probably whatever is going on during those 10 years, you will be able to find some connection to what's going on 100 years ago in this. And one of the things that is there, and I think it's one of the strongest things in the piece, I don't want to reveal the final moment when it finally has its conclusion, but the self-righteousness of the William Shatner character, his contempt for not just the South, but his contempt for Wirtz and for what he did, and how he's going to prove inhumanity via this one man. Because the atrocity was real, The facts are staggering. He has every right to be completely self-satisfied in his judgment. But towards the end of the play, as it goes wrong, he realizes even he was wrong in his assessments. In his own way, he was robbing Wirtz of the humanity that Wirtz robbed 40,000 men out of in his own way. And he realizes that at one moment towards the end. And I was in...
It's a powerful moment.
Well, it's not only a powerful moment, I've remembered it for years, the actual thing he says, all right, that Shatner says. Wirtz says these things that are similar to some of the things that Manson would say in his Geraldo Rivera interview, but they're the things that Manson says that you actually kind of agree with. Geraldo Rivera goes, so how does it feel to be the embodiment of evil? How does it feel to be the boogeyman? How does it feel to be the man that when America closes their eyes at night, you're the boogeyman that they're afraid of? Yeah? You laid it all on me.
Yeah, he's just taking it.
You laid it all on me. Just give it to me.
Yeah.
Just give it to me. I'm the problem.
Yeah,
I'm the problem.
Well, Wirtz says a lot of that because he starts off and he's like kind of laughing about his situation, even though he's attempted suicide prior to the proceedings of the trial. And when he begins laying out his defense and he starts talking about the conditions and he starts talking about what his struggle was, just trying to control the camp. Okay, we're in the middle of a war. Things started off okay. He was able to take care of the men that were there. And then it began disintegrating.
And then 1,000 more.
1,000 more.
And then 3,000 more.
And then 3,000 more.
And then 3 more. And then 5,000 more.
And then it just keeps escalating. And pretty soon it's like, okay, I'm cutting rations in half. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Okay. Men are trying to escape. I'm creating the deadline, or is that what they call it? The dead zone, or
the death line.
The death line, where you cross that line and you get shot. He's doing everything he can because he's got the mandate, the orders that were given to him of you have to hold these men.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And being Swiss, or maybe remove Swiss or the German thing and just call him Saxon.
Yeah, make it all together.
Yeah, just let's smush all that together. The fact...
I'm Swiss! Yeah. the guy in The Exorcist, I'm Swiss! Oh, you Nazi bastard! I'm Swiss!
Hold on. Which we all know is just a thing. He's a Saxon, and his real crime is that, one, he's really good at organizing, and two, he's good at following orders.
Yes.
To a fault. And then it just becomes about, that it's incremental. How did this frog die? It was boiled slowly. And what I got across was this horrible realization of, it could have been anybody who was it could have been Colonel Chipman, the William Shatner character. Yeah. It could have easily just as been him or anybody else. And in fact, at one point where it says, well, you're talking about Andersonville, but you're not talking about all of the other Andersonvilles in the North.
Okay, stop that shit.
Objection. Sustained.
We will not hear that kind of talk against the government of the United States in this courtroom.
And really what we're watching is the winner winning.
Yeah.
And making a vilification and a bad guy, and really the only guy who was executed, I believe. At the Civil War. Is that the... Did I hear that? I think that's what George C. Scott said at the very, very beginning of the play. By the way, George C. Scott looked like he had been eating cigarettes before that taping. Like literally, hey guys, I'm just going to eat a pack of cigarettes right now. Like I'm just going to chew on the tobacco for a while. Okay, let's record.
He looked so fucking intense. He looked more intense trying to be ingratiating, all right, and pleasant as a pleasant host that he is in his fucking movies when it's like acting intense.
I should also mention Martin Sheen popped up in this. He didn't even look like Martin Sheen to me because he looked like a soldier. He looked like a young soldier.
Well, he was pretty young back in 1970.
But this is obviously where he met George C. Scott, or George C. Scott knew him from the theater scene. But Martin Sheen had already been like doing television for 10 years.
Yeah, well, the thing about...
like lots of television too. So
and plays.
And he leaves this and goes and does Badlands basically.
No, he did. Actually, I think he does, the subject was Roses, like the very next year.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, well,
But that's the thing about Rage was the cast is a collection of a bunch of actors that George C. Scott had worked with recently and liked. So Bernard Hughes from The Hospital, Robert Walton from The Hospital, Martin Sheen from this.
The gang's all here.
Yeah. Basehart from this. I'm surprised Jack Cassidy wasn't in it. And we are joined by the lovely Gala.
Hi. Okay, so when I watched this movie, I did not have the introduction, unfortunately, because I was watching on YouTube.
You didn't get George C. Scott?
I did not get George C. Scott eating cigarettes and telling me about what this was going to be about. But when I was watching this, I could not stop thinking of how fun these actors must have had on set with each other, to be honest. There is so much testosterone in this movie.
Oh, there's in fact, nothing but testosterone.
But it's not just like a testosterone movie, but it is like testosterone on steroids movie. It's like just sweaty and dripping and like men just being
There's
men.
enough testosterone in Cameron Mitchell alone to kill a bear.
You got all these masculine presences, all right?
Authentic Civil War looking dudes everywhere.
Okay, you got all this masculine energy trapped in a room with nothing but shitty ass ceiling fans and no air conditioning, and things are just getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
And like as the rope just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And I think everyone knows I don't like, even though I love true crime and I watch a lot of it, I don't like love courtroom drama movies. Like it's just not my thing. But this is something different than like a movie where they go to court.
Because it's a play.
Because it's a play where they go to court. But it's really educational because you're actually learning about a real thing that happened and a real trial that happened.
And a real American conundrum that we seem to continue to repeat again and again.
Repeat.
An original sin that never goes away.
Correct.
Yeah. Exactly. Dad, you hit it right on the head for me where my favorite moments are the moments outside the proceedings. Especially that like the first witness that leaves and they actually
out in the hallway.
They follow him out of the hallway and they close the door and he passes the next witness that's coming in and he stands there and he puts his hat on and then he kind of shrugs and just walks away.
Yeah, okay, I'm going back to my life now.
Yeah.
And those were my favorite moments. And then also the moment I think after it had been like a week or something, and then when Shatner and Cassidy have their scene together, where afterwards they're kind of talking, and that's kind of when Shatner gets his plan on how exactly he's going to win, because he tells Cassidy, his character tells Cassidy that he needs to prove that he would have done different in his place. And that's really his conundrum, is like, if I was him, I would have done different, and that's what I need to prove.
Easy to say.
And then Cassidy is saying, but they won't let you do that. And so, you're going to win this trial, but you're a fraud, and you know it, and I know it.
Yeah.
Because they will not let you do the only thing that you want to do. Well, you are a functionary. You are a functionary.
And you're also a young guy looking for fame.
And you know, at the end of everything, when everything, Richard Basehart he's gone off to jail and the courtroom's emptied out and everyone's gone and it's just two attorneys. And the two attorneys, like the way attorneys really are, start talking frankly about things. And what I found amazing was Jack Cassidy, who had been like, really turning red and like raising his voice and like just orating powerfully. When it was all done, it was like, it's not personal at all. In fact, it's just like, this is just how it was. And this is the reality of the situation. And this is law. I mean, that's what it is. It's the crass moment of, this is what the law is.
Well, also because the whole entire thing also is that they ask Jack Cassidy's character, like, how did he come to have you as defense? And he's being paid by a group of people that have all put money in to
the Southern Defense Fund.
Well, particularly works.
But he only takes jobs that there's a sliver that he might not be guilty.
When the government wants to prosecute somebody and they don't have any direct evidence against them, they always charge them with conspiracy. Conspiracy is the one crime you can charge anybody and you don't need direct evidence against them.
Yeah, and we also
That's exactly true. That's exactly true.
We see this possibility also like when they put each of the witnesses on the stand, specifically the doctor, because when he comes in, it's really interesting because when they start talking about the conditions because it was bad, et cetera, and I think he's maybe the first or the second witness. When Jack Cassidy's character the defense starts kind of asking their questioning, they say, okay, like how many men died? And Shatner's kind of outlined that it just got worse and worse and worse as the months went on. And then the defense does something interesting, in my opinion, which is he asks him, because they're kind of trying to prove like that you become numb to the death. But what he says is, oh, so you arrived in February, and then it chronicles, okay, they all started dying when the doctor came. Like, and I started thinking about that each of these witnesses that worked at the camp or were at the camp that
they're also looking out for themselves.
They're also looking out for themselves, because just in the same turn, they could turn to them and say, you're the reason why everyone died. You're the reason we're going to put you on trial and you're going to get hanged. And if you don't speak up, you're the one that's
someone
next.
Has to be the sacrificial lamb.
And it's not the Surgeon General, and it's not the guy that said, no, we're not going to take the crops that the Christian women's group, because there are other people that are above this guy. But this is the guy that's going to get the short end of the stick of it.
Prosecute the German again.
And also, the one other thing is like that the thing that they give him is brandy to like, he's had this suicide attempt and like, let's give him brandy to like, quick, he needs brandy. So the guy's just drunk.
Well, I also love that at a certain point, because he can't really, he's in a weakened state. In fact, they use that as part of their defense. There's no way he can do the things that you've alleged him to do. One, he's got these historic injuries. Two, like this and that.
Muscle atrophy.
He's so weak that when they bring in like a chaise lounge and like set it up in the middle of the courtroom for him to kind of recline on and lay on, which I'm sure did not help his defense optically.
So what did you think of William Shatner in it?
Okay, so Shatner, my favorite thing. Okay, so first, Cameron Mitchell. Cameron Mitchell is like so good in this role. He is so amazing. And Cameron Mitchell is like doing the accent and like and then Shatner's just Shatner. Shatner's just Shatner. At first I was like, oh my God, it's just gonna be Shatner being Shatner. And then I got super into it. I got super into Shatner being Shatner, delivering these lines, because he is like,
we don't want Shatner as anything but Shatner.
No, exactly. And he is like bringing the stage and bringing like Shakespeare and like the craft and all of that. I think he did such a good job. And I honestly, I thought the ensemble of the cast that George C. Scott brings together to do the role. And I'd be really interested in like kind of knowing what the difference is that George C. Scott as an actor had versus Shatner as an actor in the same role. But then also George C. Scott, his performance is informing Shatner's performance because he's directing someone that's in his role.
I mean, he handpicked William Shatner.
Yeah, he's like, you're going
to play my coveted role.
He absolutely
and
did
Shatner's
that.
really he's coming hot off of Star Trek. Like Star Trek's over.
So it just so happens that I have the Broadway cast album of the Andersonville Trial from the original George C. Scott production. That it's not the entire play; it's just big sections of the play. So let me play a little bit of George C. Scott's opening summation of the trial, and then let's compare it with the Shatner version.
Charge: criminal conspiracy to destroy the lives of soldiers of the United States in violation of the laws and customs of war. Specification: that Henry Wirtz, who was in charge of the Confederate prison at Andersonville, Georgia, did keep in barbarously close confinement federal soldiers up to the number of 40,000, without adequate shelter against the burning heat of summer or the cold of winter, and without sufficient food, clothing, or medical care, causing them to languish and die to the number of more than 14,000. Specification: that he established a line known as the deadline, and that he instructed the prison guards stationed on the walls of the prison stockade to fire upon and kill any prisoner who might pass beyond that deadline. Specification: that he used bloodhounds to hunt down, seize, and mangle escaping prisoners of war, through these various causes bringing about the deaths of about 50 federal soldiers, their names unknown. Specification: that through direct order and or by his own hand, he brought about the murder of 13 prisoners, their names unknown.
Charge: criminal conspiracy to destroy the lives of soldiers of the United States in violation of the laws and customs of war. Specification: that Henry Wirtz, who was in charge of the Confederate prison at Andersonville, Georgia, did keep in barbarously close confinement federal soldiers up to the number of 40,000, without adequate shelter against the burning heat of summer or the cold of winter. And specification that said Henry Wirtz, in carrying out this conspiracy, did not provide the prisoners of war with sufficient food, clothing, or medical care, causing them to languish and die to the number of more than 14,000. Specification that he established a line known as the deadline, and that he instructed the prison guards stationed on the walls of the prison stockade to fire upon and kill any prisoner who might pass beyond that deadline. Specification that he used bloodhounds to hunt down, seize, and mangle escaping prisoners of war, and through these various causes bringing about the deaths of about 50 federal soldiers, their names unknown. Specification, that through direct order and or by his own hand, brought about the murder of 13 prisoners, their names unknown.
I think Shatner's terrific in it. It was interesting. I was putting it a little bit under a microscope as I was watching it the other day. I've always loved Bill as an actor. I actually make a point about saying that the reason I like the original Star Trek is because I like William Shatner's.
Oh yeah,
Kirk. I mean that's it's all about him. It's all about him. I like everything else, but he's my entry. But with this material, that affected way that he has of talking becomes almost like Elizabethan verse.
Oh yeah.
There's a musicality to it that theater actors, their voice is an instrument. If you're going to pull off some of the great works and some of the great performances and some of the great writers of all time, your voice needs to be an instrument, and it needs to be almost like singing. But it can't go into sing-songiness either.
That's well said.
That is what the great Shakespearean actors could do. I mean, that is why John Barrymore is John Barrymore. Is because they could do it. That's why John Carradine could do that.
You command the performance,
and if that means that as a young man, you go to the beach and you recite Shakespeare over the shore until you destroyed your voice and you can't talk anymore. You go home and your voice gets a little better, and then you go and you do it again until your voice has been built up like a muscle.
You work your instrument.
You work your instrument. And Shatner has that, and it's very, very appropriate for this material. Now, the only thing I will say, Shatner is handling the drama, and he's handling the narrative, and he's handling the language. He doesn't have the power that George C. Scott would have brought to the character. Well, just imagining George C. Scott going from beginning to end and imagining being in the same room with him, I mean, that almost seems like crushing an atom. There is a power, a violent power to George C. Scott. And to see him sustain this for 2.5 hours in a theatrical, or 3 hours in a theatrical production, and in a play, and this is one of the more things I like the most about the play, but I like this anyway in plays, is it's not a play worked into a drama. The whole concept, the whole theater craft of the play is you are a fly on the wall during a trial.
Yeah, in fact, there's one point
it's completely procedural.
Where George C. Scott with his camera, because we're basically in a 3-wall set. I mean, it's a courtroom set. He actually takes it behind, like people who are kind of in an audience, people who are witnesses there, so that we feel that we're part of that.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So there was a moment where Jack Cassidy's performance was so strong and his voice was so coming through so powerfully. I was like, he's winning.
Yeah.
He's winning the case.
Cassidy has the power that I would think that George C. Scott had.
Yeah. And I'd like to know who played
I'll tell you
the character of Otis Baker, the Cassidy role.
Albert Decker. Dr. Cyclops.
Yeah. Dr. Cyclops, the bald.
I'm holding right here the original playbill of the George C. Scott production of Andersonville Trial in my hand. And I also have another program of another production where the big star actor was Brian Dunleavy, and he played Otis.
Oh.
And Charles Durning is in that production.
Oh, Durning.
Yeah.
He's another excellent stage actor.
Yeah, when he was a younger actor. Yeah. He's like one of the other roles in it.
And also, I think any actor that wants a monologue should take a look at this, because all these monologues are so good, and every character has like their own really good distinct monologue.
This is some tight writing.
No, I've read the play recently. Actually, I just got the play and I read it recently, and it's considering how thick the play seems, the material is actually quite thin. All right, it doesn't take up a lot of pages. One last thing that I would like to bring up is something that George C. Scott does as a director that I've never seen another director do it to the extent that George C. Scott does it in this. And I've remembered it. And I've used it in a few different movies, especially Django, but I've used it in a few other ones. And I thought back to the Andersonville trial when I used this technique that he did. One of the things that would be especially in a film production of the Andersonville trial, where you have to bring the camera in closer than an audience perspective in an auditorium. You have all your actors in the piece, but then you also have a ton of other people who are just hanging around that are constantly in the shot, but they don't have any line. So like, for instance, you have like 9 generals like sitting there at that table. Now, none of them say anything because it's their job to listen, and then they debate with each other in closed rooms. It's only Cameron Mitchell's job to speak to the court and be the voice of this body. But the point being is, they all have to be like legit generals, have to be able to hold the camera and not be distracting because they're there constantly. And then there's sketch artists and reporters and soldiers that are acting as bailiffs and, all court stenographers, everything. So what Scott does is he casts a bunch of famous, familiar character actors to just play all those roles. Faces of actors that we've seen forever. Faces of actors like somebody like William Bryant, who's played like the soldier that's guarding the door, all right, that you've seen a zillion times if you watch 60s Western television, but you probably didn't know his name. But he's right there. The generals, Alan Hale Jr., all right, the skipper from Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
Okay, doesn't say a line, but he's there, but he looks like a general. He looks like a Civil War general. He looks absolutely appropriate. Dick Miller with a pompadour, all right, is the sketch artist. Sitting at the general table, you have 2 villains from Billy Jack. You have Bert Freed, who was a Posner, and you have Kenneth Tobey from The Thing, who was the sheriff. And the one that I was had the most fun pointing out to you, Ian Wolfe, who played Stott, all right, in Son of Monte Cristo. One of my favorite traders.
Yeah.
It's the thing that only an actor would think about. I don't want to have to worry about these stupid extras thinking about their grocery list, what they're going to do later today. I need an actor who's going to commit. Just because they doesn't have dialogue doesn't mean he's not playing a character. And once I had money, I could actually do that. I started doing that a little bit. Like, for instance, when I was doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and we're doing the scene that supposed to be the Lancer scene. And there's the character Leo's playing, Caleb Decatu, and then there's his land pirates that are there. And so like the land pirates have like a couple of lines. So I met a bunch of different actors that are real actors. All right. I have them come in and I go, okay, so look, here's the thing. I'm looking for a gang. I need a gang, and I don't want to cast extras. I want actually actors, so I can cut to you and that you're playing a role. Just because you don't have dialogue doesn't mean you're not playing a role. Literally, like the Andersonville trial. Now, I have a couple of lines, and things can change. I could also throw something to you, but I'm not going to promise you that. But if you're not doing anything that week, do you want to come and play with us, for that week? And then almost all the actors like, yeah, of course I want to. If they're not doing anything else, why fucking not? Yeah, I'll come by. They got paid for a week. And they got to hang out with us, and then I had real people.
Yeah,
I had real actors, playing the gang. I can cut to them anytime I want, and they were great. They were solid.
They're actually acting. They're not just standing there blank-eyed.
I don't have to avoid them. Yeah. I want more of them. It was great. It worked out great. But I learned that from George C. Scott in the Andersonville trial.
So my VHS tape has not arrived yet, so I did watch this on YouTube. It was sadly missing George C. Scott at the intro giving his introduction. But I bought my tape for $9.99 from a private seller.
Hello, I'm George C. Scott. It's my happy job this evening to give you an improvisational introduction to the Andersonville Trial, a play by Saul Levitt. I did it 10 years ago on Broadway as an actor, and I've directed it here for you tonight. I don't know how good it is as far as the directing assignment goes, but you're going to have to be the judge of that. The cast is splendid. The play is wonderful. It means a great deal to me, and I think it can mean something to you contemporaneously. It takes place 100 years ago, but what it says and what it means, I think you'll understand. And I sincerely hope you'll enjoy it.
To hear the rest of this episode, including discussions of 2 more movies and our award winners, sign up for the Video Archives Patreon. You'll get access to full Video Archives episodes, the Video Archives after show, exclusive merch, and more. Head on over to patreon.com/videoarchives to subscribe today. The Video Archives podcast is hosted by Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary and produced by Josh Richmond and Gala Avary. Find out more about the show and get Video Archives merch at videoarchivespodcast.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Video Archives and on Instagram at Video Archives Pod.